President Muhammadu Buhari has written to the Senate asking it to approve adjustment to the 2022 fiscal framework, which will raise petrol subsidy to 4 trillion naira. President Buhari, who explained that an adjustment became imperative in view of the new development in both the global and domestic economies, stressed that the developments were occasioned by the spike in the market price of crude oil, which were a fallout of the Russian-Ukrainian war. President Buhari, who is requesting that the Senate approve an increase in the oil benchmark from $62 per barrel to $72 per barrel, is also seeking for a reduction in the projected oil production volume from 1.8 million barrels per day to 1.6 million barrels per day. He also asked the Senate to approve an increase in the estimated provision for PMS subsidy for 2022 from 442 billion to 4 trillion. We are now joined virtually by Aliu Audu, who is an economist and analyst to shed more light on the president's demand. Good morning, sir, and thanks for joining us today on the program.
Good morning. How are you? Thank you very much.
Thank you. You had listened to the recent, or rather, you have read the recent presidential demands to the both House of the National Assembly requesting for adjustments to the 2022 fiscal framework. To start with, what do you make of this request by the president?
Well, it's a giant leap from an additional 3.3 trillion naira. It's a giant leap, and it's going to hit us hard because this is way more than expected. What can I say? There's the Russian-Ukraine war that is affecting the world economy. So we just need to start our own local production, or get our refineries up and running, and so we don't have to fall back on subsidy. I think that's the most important step we have to take now.
Now, stepping up local production is one thing. Shouldn't we be worried that at a time when we are supposed to be recording windfalls as a result of what is happening and increasing international prices, what we are doing is to raise expenditure instead? Isn't there anything else we can do as it stands?
Yeah, that's the problem. We're supposed to be having a windfall from the increment in oil prices, but rather is the opposite effect. That is the effect of being too much import dependent. We import everything. We're importing fuel, which we produce. That is totally wrong. It's economics on the other side. We import food. That's why we are having these issues. And obviously, if you're spending that money, you're going to borrow to spend that money. And the subsidy has its own scams that come with it. And it's going to hit the economy very hard. So we need to wake up. I don't know what's going on with the Dangote refinery. We need to wake up and get local production going, Dangote refineries working, modular refineries up and running too. So we need to just get the economy up and running and stop being too much import dependent. Otherwise, and this is what is affecting the Naira, because to buy this, we need to go and buy dollars to buy this. And it's bad news for the Naira. The Naira is one of the weakest currencies in Africa as we speak. So it is bad news. It's not good news at all. We need to refocus and organize the economy, basically.
Talking about refocusing and reorganizing, the president mentioned a number of things he wanted the Green and the Red Chamber to consider. One of them, perhaps Nigeria would seek a bit more clarification around, is the request to raise the oil benchmark from $62 as captured in the budget to $73. What do you think the president is trying to achieve with this particular request, especially because it doesn't seem like we have been saving the excess on this oil sales? I mean, all along, the excess crude account doesn't seem to be recording any extra.
Well, what can I say? Again, an increment from 63 to 70 should be good news for us, because there is an increase in oil prices. But that is obviously not the case because we are having to spend that money and even borrow more on subsidy. And that is not good news for us. So the effect is just a negative effect. It's not helping us. It's not. We just have to look for other streams of revenue because oil has been bad news since the 1960s, since we discovered oil. Let's look at other countries. Look at Russia, for example. Even though it's in a global turmoil, they have oil and gas, but Russia and Ukraine supply 25% of the world with. They are into manufacturing, production, and other things. So all sectors of the economy are working. They have their oil, they have their production and manufacturing going on, and they have their agriculture going on. This is what we are not doing. We're just so dependent on oil, and we are even importing the food we eat. We import fish, we import milk. We have a food import bill of $5 billion. Like what we did to the rice sector, that is what we should replicate in other sectors so that we will become a net exporter of food. We have enough agrarian land to feed the whole of Africa. And that is from the African Development Bank. So the resources are there, no doubt. It's just, again, reorganization of the system, reorganization of the country, and knowing what our focus is. Our focus is not to be talking about oil at this stage. Our focus is to talk about other areas, agriculture, the service sector, manufacturing. We have the capabilities. Recently, there was a Belarusian company that came to order, armored cars from Nigeria. We have the Innocent Motors. We have no business importing cars. Like in the 80s, Peugeot was made mandatory to all government officials. We're not doing that with Innocent Motors. Let's improve, let's help them, let's support them, let's improve their capacity and make it official that all government officials should drive Innocent Motors. That is going to create jobs, that will strengthen the Naira, and that will stop taking our jobs to Germany, Japan, and all these countries we are buying cars from. We need to look inward.
Okay, I hear you, Mr. Audu, when you talk about diversification and all. But before we get to that point where, where diversification, takes full effect, what are the short-term solutions to where we find ourselves? I'll give you an instance. The government, through its own sources, the GMD of the NNPC and other notable government sources have said over 60 to 70% of the crude oil we produce are stolen. If that amount of theft is still going on and we have not done anything to cut it down, how are we, does the solution lies with cutting down our daily quota from 1.8 to 1.6 when we can even barely meet 1.4 million rather than tackle theft and find how we can channel those amount of crude, to the international market and make more money, which should be our priority at this, which is a low-hanging fruit for us as a country?
Yes, precisely. The low-hanging fruit is for us to tackle theft. I think there's a lackluster behavior towards dealing with issues, critical issues. I mean, somebody can come to your house and, break into your house and you look the other way. We just have to come to the table, tackle the security issues, because the security is the motherboard of the economy. We have to tackle it. I mean, if we have to go into some sort of, amnesty, whatever we have to do, we have to do. But we have to resume production. We're not the only country that produces oil. We're not the only country that has oil reserves. We have Russia, we have other countries, we have Venezuela, why is it that it's in Nigeria that we're talking about theft and we are the whole country is having to bow down to, stealing? That's totally wrong. I believe other facets, that's why we've increased the budget for security. I believe that should be able to deal with it. Otherwise, what we are going to do is that one day we'll wake up and find out that we don't even have oil because everything has been stolen, and we'll become beggars. So I think we should stop having misplaced priorities and know what our priorities are. We should tackle what the issues are and face it head on because other countries do that. There's no country that came and became successful overnight by smiling at themselves. Look at Singapore, look at Malaysia, look at the BRICS economy, look at South Africa. Look at a lot of countries. They struggle. There's a fight to succeed. And if we're not willing to do that fight, then we're going to give up our future, which I don't think is the correct thing to do.
Talking about the fight to succeed, one other thing that seemed to strike, it's the request for even more borrowing, which is one area where Nigerians have become agitated of late, especially as we continue to swell our borrowing capacity. At what point would we be saying that we have, touched that threshold where borrowing becomes dangerous to us as a country? Because we just seem to, every time there is a need to spend more, we just seem to resort to the borrowing window. How much more of this borrowing can we absorb right now as a country?
Okay, as a matter of fact, I think our borrowing to GDP ratio is about 25% or thereabout. The last time I checked. Borrowing is not actually a bad thing. There are countries that are well borrowed, so it's not so much of a bad thing. That's if you are borrowing for a particular project and that project is being done. If you borrow for railway, the railway is being done, because what it does is that as you borrow for railway, the railway pays back itself, pays back the loan. If you borrow for roads, they have toll gates on the road and, they take care of themselves. But what you find yourself doing is borrowing and not completing projects. It creates what they call the debt trap. That means you keep borrowing and not complete and doing this project, and then it becomes a burden to the future generation. Now, what you find out is that you will now be allocating majority of your budget to servicing debt. It's called the debt trap. And after a while, right now, we're spending a huge amount servicing debt. After a while, you will not have money for capital projects. You will not have money for recurrent projects. That's why you see the squeeze in the police, military, and all those places, because we don't have enough money. So this is totally wrong. Rather than borrowing, we should look at how to, generate revenue. We have one of the lowest tax system in the world. Our tax system is not is not well done. It's very low, and we don't exhaust all the facets of taxation. So that is another area that we should look at, and we can generate revenue.
Yeah, without cutting you short there, when you say our tax system is low and we are not exploring all of the facets, some other economics of your like would disagree with you, because the question with people with other perspective is, where are the businesses to tax? You have to tax something that is alive. So is it a burden on those who are already paying tax, or to expand the wealth base so that we can create the kind of businesses that can pay more taxes? So which area with taxes, with regards to tax revenues, do you think we are not doing exactly well?
Well, you see, our tax revenue is about, I think, as low as 6% of GDP or something like that, which is, in normal economies, it should be much higher than that. What it is that there's what they call tax evasion. Businesses are not properly taxed. There's a low tax system, and a lot of people get away with taxing. Look at property tax now. You go and buy a property of billions of naira. People buy billions of naira. There's no property tax. Nobody pays tax. And, you should focus on taxing the rich people, the businesses. There's a lot of, our tax system is underdeveloped, basically, because there are a lot of facets, a lot of areas in taxation that we can adopt, which can increase revenue. As I said, property tax is one of them. Inheritance tax is one of them. A lot of tax that we can explore. Taxing profits of big corporations and all that. We are not doing that. A lot of people avert tax. I'm not talking about the normal Nigerians. I'm talking about the big companies that are doing well. We have a gross domestic product of the biggest GDP in Africa, of almost $500 billion, but our tax percentage is as low as 6%, very weak. So a lot has to be done. There's a lot of tax evasion. There are a lot of tax we can bring that could help people, that could generate revenue for the government. So that's what I'm looking at. I've just named a few: property tax, inheritance tax. There are a lot of others that I can, quickly pick up. And that's what we need to do, because if you look at the ratio of our GDP to tax, is very, very small. Most countries have.
Yes. So still staying with that, are you worried about the size of the spending now? Given all of this restructuring and new demand, it seemed to have pushed up the national spending to somewhere in the region of 18 trillion. It's an election year. We expect that quite a number of money will be will be flooded into the economy, typical of our elections activity. Are you worried for a further worsening of our inflation positions right now? We would take a quick break at this point. When we return, the conversation with Mr. Audu continues. Thank you for staying with us. It's still Daybreak on Trust Television. We were discussing with our guest, Mr. Aliu Audu, an economics and a financial analyst. We were looking at the president's demands to the Senate and the House of Rep to approve adjustments to the 2022 fiscal framework, which will raise petrol subsidy to 4 trillion. Mr. Audu, we lost you there. Thank you very much for coming back online.
Yeah.
Just
Thank you.
asking, yes, with the increased spending, as we have seen largely in consumption, and all of the rates that are going up, and it's an election year with all of the spendings you are seeing, are you not worried for worsening inflation figures for the ordinary Nigerian? What's your take, with further inflation deterioration?
Well, unfortunately, inflation has to increase no matter how we look at it. Because if you look at now, the cost of diesel is up. Diesel that used to be 250 naira per liter is now about 800 naira per liter. And this cost is going to be transferred to other areas because the businessmen will pick up more costs, so they're going to push it to their customers. So that's going to affect inflation. We have issues of security that we've been talking about. Recently, herdsmen have started, bandits have started kidnappings and attacking farmlands. So food security is also threatened. And farmers might not be able to go to the market. And that's also going to cause shortage of food. All this is good. And of course, you see the Ukraine-Russian war. All this is going to lead to inflation. So there's nothing we can do. Inflation is going to go up, given these various variables happening in the economy. And we just have to brace up for harder times and look for ways to bring down this cost, especially the cost of diesel, because that's going to be translated to most. We don't have stable electricity. And if the cost of doing business is high, then that's going to be transferred into goods and services. And as such, that will bring about inflation. So the government needs to focus on why should diesel jump from 250 naira per liter to 800, whatever that has happened. That's too much of a jump. In developed countries like America, we know there is inflation, even in America, but it increases. The cost of petrol increased by 1 cent or 1 penny or, not too much. But ours is by almost 300%, 200 to 300%. That is too much for the common man to bear, and that's going to bring about inflation. So we need to find out the reason why these costs are going up and try to, do something about it. Let diesel return back to the normal price. Whatever we have to do, let's do it. Let security issues be tackled so that if not, what you're going to find out is that we'll end up going into recession someday, very soon, if time is not taken. So we need to work to subsidize for the common man, and we don't want the pressure to be on the common Nigerian. This pressure is going to come so hard on the common Nigerian. And you know what it is. When you can't feed your family, when you can't put food on the table, you know the result. You are going to resort to kidnapping, banditry, crime. We don't need that. Let's tap into the economy. God has blessed us with, a beautiful country with a lot of potential. So let's tap into it. Let's invest in the right places. Let's invest more in agriculture. We have solid minerals. Let's invest and, look for ways to cushion these effects by looking inwards. Thank you.
I'm a bit worried, Mr. Audu. Given the seasons that we are in, it does appear that the 2023 elections have come upon us much earlier than we are used to. And apparently the implication for that is that we have taken our eyes away from the economy, and just about everybody who should have a responsibility for refocusing this economy has their eyes fixed on the 2023 elections. What can we do as a country, to reduce these occasions that creates all kinds of arbitrage within our systems? If you look at the exchange rate, the difference between the official window and the parallel market is so huge. You wonder whether there is anything official that can be done. Now we are talking about diesel from 250 to 700. It does look like a complete absence of those systems and institutions that should ensure, not exactly price control, but that customers or Nigerians, as it were, are not exploited. What can we do, whilst looking at 2023, to keep our eyes on the balls? What are your recommendations?
Well, yeah, that's the functions of different facets of the economy, especially the central bank. We need everybody in the central bank to forget about politics and focus on the governance of the business of doing business. I mean, of doing governing the economy. Because look at what is happening. Diesel is moving from 250 to 700, as you say. The Naira, the window, the dollar window, the official window from the parallel market is huge, and that creates an opportunity for all sorts of malpractices. Now, this round tripping and whatever you call it that banks do. Now, what we need to do is and the main causal effect is shortage. During the Solodo era, when you open more windows for dollar, let people access dollar as much as possible so that there is no hoarding. It is this hoarding that pushes up the price. If you need dollar, you should be able to have access to it. There's what they call the DAS auction window before, and if businessmen needed to bid for dollars, they just go there and bid for dollars and you get it. Let's do that. Let's make dollars more available to Nigerians so that people don't hoard. And that's how Solodo did it. There was no incentive for you to go to a black market because the official market and the official rate and the parallel market were the same. So there was no horse trading. How did he do it? It's simple economics. Make it more available, open more windows for people to be able to trade. And given what is happening in the economy, this is time for election. We know it's an election year. Let the politicians focus on politics and let the technocrats, the technicians focus on the business of managing the economy. That is their focus. So if the economy is not doing well, if we're noticing that the exchange rate between the dollar and Naira is still widening, and we know that, all these disturbances in the economy, in the oil price, we know who to look at. And there's no other place we can look at apart from the central bank. That is their responsibility to manage the economy, and the Ministry of Finance, fiscal and monetary policies. So we look into them and we expect them to perform their job. And these institutions need to stay out of politics. The survival of Nigerians is more important. The economy is very important, and we need to keep the economy going and not to crash the economy in a political year. So we call on the president to get the right people, use his powers to get the right people to focus on the business of managing the economy, so that the common man doesn't feel the pain. Nobody's going to be happy if most Nigerians can't feed. We don't want that. We want the economy to be going like it's done in other countries, while the politicians do their business of politicking. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aliu Audu, there with us, giving us perspective and dimensions to the President's recent request for the amendments to the 2022 fiscal framework. He has said it all. Let the President focus on the business of governance. Let the technocrats, concentrate on wheeling this economy back on track, whilst they have another eye on the 2023 election. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Mr. Audu, and getting your perspective this morning on what we need to do as a country, as an economy, to lift as many people as possible out of poverty. Do have a great day, and we'll continue to come back to you some other times where we need you to provide insightful perspective to how to advance this economy. Once again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.